Welcome to the Table podcast series with Bridget Johnson. Each month, we give you game-changing conversations about K-12 education and leadership. Join us as top educators, field experts, and administrators share actionable strategies to transform your school community. Let's dive in.
Welcome to The Table, the podcast where student life professionals, educators, and change makers come together to share stories, insights, and ideas for building community where everyone belongs. I'm your host, Bridget Johnson, founder of the Dean's Roundtable and longtime student life professional. Each episode, we'll hear from people doing the hard, hopeful work of creating more just, compassionate, and restorative communities. So pull up a chair and let's get started. Today, we're exploring a fascinating intersection of neuroscience, emotion, and education. How understanding our inner world can help schools support well-being in a deeper, more measurable way. Joining me are Dr. Bill Nolan and Margot Moses from Leading Indicator Systems, the developers of the Agile Brain. Agile Brain is a groundbreaking platform that uses neuroscience-based emotional measurement to help individuals and institutions better understand what drives well-being and motivation. Dr. Bill Nolan serves as chief scientist and is one of the founders of Leading Indicator Systems. With a doctorate in psychometrics from Boston University, Bill has spent his career designing assessments that measure how people think, feel, and act, from corporate leadership programs to the early days of Apple, where he helped develop a user experience that shaped modern computing. Margot Moses is a longtime educator and student life leader with nearly 30 years in independent schools. She now serves as senior advisor for student well-being at Leader Indicator Systems, helping schools across the country use emotional data to create more caring, connected, and resilient communities. Together, Bill and Margot are helping bridge the science of the brain with the art of human connection, and I can't wait to dig in. Welcome, guys. How you doing today?
Doing well.
I'm doing just fine. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. And so we're just going to just jump right in. You both come to this work from very different paths, neuroscience and education. What first drew each of you to the study of emotion and well-being, and how did your paths converge around the Agile Brain?
That's a good question, Bridget. I'm going to kick off because I haven't been around as long as Bill has. And I was, as you said, I was in schools for almost 30 years, and it just became a point for me in which I needed to step away from schools. And so what's the next thing for me? And I was connected with Agile Brain through the CEO, John Penrose, and he reeled me in pretty quickly and said, hey, with your educational background, we could use you. We are taking this amazing platform that we've developed, and we would really like to launch it in the educational space. And I took the exercise, and right then and there, I was sold. And so then I got reeled even more, and then I connected with Bill. And once you hear from Bill a little bit, you will realize how amazing he is to work with. He is brilliant and knows the ins and outs of this platform beautifully, and it's really been a joy for the last year and a bit to be working for them.
Awesome. All right, Bill.
Well, as Margot said, I've been around for a long time. I actually started out in academia. I was on the faculty at Boston University after completing my degrees there. They called me a triple terrier because I did all 3 degrees.
Nice.
There. In teaching, it was somewhat unusual because that wasn't what a lot of folks did, but they were kind enough to let me continue. So I was teaching there. I did teach at Brandeis as well.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said in the introduction, something transformative for me was I got to work with that very first Macintosh team.
Wow.
And that was a pretty wild time. And really, it gave me instilled in me this quest to find out what makes people make certain kinds of choices and decisions. Because if you remember the Mac days, the very first days, that was against PC.
Yeah.
The IBM, and that turned out to be really not a presentation about technology. It was much more about changing the way you think and the way you live. And that, again, has had a lasting effect on me. But I wandered through and tried to, neuropsych was called physiological psychology. That's how far back I go. And I did early studies in vision. And My advisor there used to say, we're studying vision because it's the only thing we have a hope of understanding. The other stuff is all way too complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And I wake up every morning realizing just how complicated we are as humans and how important it is that we really continue to dig at what makes us work because we don't understand it. And
No, I don't.
if you think back to the 70s and 80s, it was a time of the cognitive revolution in psychology, and everything was about how you think. And those emotion things, they just get in the way. We need to move them to the side. And the breakthrough work by Damasio and then following Jonathan Haidt to say it's not that they come along, it's that without them, we're nothing. We can't. And Damasio's famous case with Eliot is that his lack of emotion wasn't just that he didn't have feeling. He couldn't make a decision.
Oh, wow.
He couldn't make basic decisions. I mean, I'm like going to dinner. Where should we go? Couldn't do it.
Wow.
So it's fundamental. And then Agile Brain stepped in, and J.D. Pincus is the originator of the technique. We've done a lot in terms of modifying and refining metrics. But he's the one who brought the notion of the emotional framework to us. And the framework is, I think, the genius behind it.
Okay.
And he is, if you could nominate for a MacArthur, JD would get my nomination. It's just an incredible breakthrough.
Awesome.
And I joke with people and say I've used it with everything from pretty complex behavioral problems to dealing with a picky eating 5-year-old.
It all works, right? So for those hearing about it for the first time, what is the Agile Brain and what makes it different from other well-being or emotional intelligence tools out there?
First and foremost is it uses images.
Okay.
There are no words. You see rapid presentation of images, and you simply, as the student, you either select it or you don't.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer. Go with your gut. How do you feel? Select it, don't select it. And most people say, that's pretty simple. A lot of adults and adults more than kids, are a little uncomfortable with it. They say it goes too fast.
Oh, absolutely. When I first did it, I was like, I'm sorry, what is happening here? I don't know what's
Yeah.
happening. No words and no directions. Am I doing this right? Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And then you get your result. And as one person said to me, and it's one of those responses that I'll probably be with me forever, is she said, okay, 3.5 minutes. I went through, I looked at these pictures, I selected them. I'm not sure why. And how can you tell me what's in my refrigerator? It is that kind of thing of, whoa, what's behind this? And yeah, that's been eating at me. I'm working with a marathon runner right now. We're applying Agile Brain to that. And he just said to me, how are you getting at these things? And I'm saying, I'm not, you are. And that to me is it's going to be the real magic of Agile Brain, is it's not telling you what's wrong with you. It's telling you what's within you that you can leverage. This could be your superpower.
I love that.
Yeah. That is something that I think we all like, and I think particularly when we think about education and students and teachers, we're quick to go to the what's good and what's bad, or what's right and what's wrong. And I think this is that uncomfortableness that you were talking about a little bit with the framework and the emotions, is that there isn't a right and wrong. It is what it is where you are right now. And then what you do with that sort of takes you to that next level, which to me is something that's so incredible about it, is that it allows you to do that.
So let's unpack that a bit. So what's happening in the brain when we experience emotion? How does the Agile Brain actually measure that?
Okay, it goes back to really the seminal work of Antonio Damasio, who looked at the time course for processing images. And we process images much more quickly than we process words. I mean, the latest figure is not just a little faster, 66,000 times faster.
Wow.
So we process images in a very particular way. And what Damasio worked out through very careful measurement, magnetic imaging, where you can get accuracy at the time course, that it takes us about 200 milliseconds for the image to register with us. Well,
Okay.
that's not a long time. I mean,
Mhm.
that's 2/10 of a second. And between 200 milliseconds and about 1,000, 800 to 1,000, we're just sort of getting comfortable with it. It's all about feel. Then we start a cognitive process. So our timing is such that what we're trying to do is say, I want to peel back that layer of cognitive. I don't want you cognitively filtering. I just want your gut response.
Okay.
So we're taking and recording the image that you select, and we're getting other metrics about it. We know how long it took you to select it. And that enters into an algorithm that gives us a notion of how activated that particular cell is. The images all map to the 12 cells of the framework. And we present two sets of images, things you'd like more of in the parlance of old psychology approach, and things you'd like less of. And again, in that same parlance, avoidance or promotion prevention. And there's interesting stuff that goes on there too, Bridget, in
Mhm.
terms of how are we affected by those prevention images?
Mm.
Because they tend to be more in your face. They're not things that you think about. They're things that are getting in your way. Then I think all of us would agree that those things are not things we sit back and think about. They present themselves.
Right.
So, and we're looking at both sides of that. And that becomes an important part of the interpretation, that balance of more or less. So it's essentially you're responding to a prompt, a cue.
Mhm. Yep.
When I think about, and you can point it at very different things, but
Mhm.
when I think about my life as a student, I wish I could feel more or I wish I could feel less. And we capture those data. They get put into an algorithm. You get a response that comes back and says, hey, generally, how you doing? And here's some real things you can use to essentially thrive.
It's very cool. So, you both talked about how emotions drive learning and motivation. What are some of the key insights from neuroscience that you wish every educator understood?
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Yeah, I don't want to lecture educators. I mean, one of my huge regrets was leaving teaching. I loved it.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of those things that I said you have to do. And I even loved doing some of the introductory stuff. I mean, I wasn't crazy about lecturing in a 500-seat amphitheater,
Fair enough.
but I loved working with the undergraduates. I never wanted to just do at Brandeis, my course load was one graduate course with PhD students. I mean, I would
Yeah.
do four students for the year. That wasn't what fueled me at the
Mhm.
time. So I think that working with educators is something I love doing. And what I love being able to do is show how the framework can help us unpack things. Our current, any kind of the daily problems. I mean, Margot and I worked together with the high school.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I loved with the kids, there are a couple of things, and I'll go off on a little bit of a tangent here with the story. One of the kids came in and he said he was pretty angry. After he said I was really pissed.
Okay.
And I said, I mean, we're talking emotion. I said, I don't have that in the matrix, but let's start to unpack it and what is going on. And it was the notion of a science fair that had a science fair. He was a participant and got no recognition, nothing, but didn't. And I
Yeah.
said, so let's use the framework and let's talk. Is it recognition that you think was missing from that is making you so angry?
Mhm.
And he thought and we talked and he said, no. So we crossed recognition out. And I said, so sometimes people want to be in control. They want autonomy. There are issues around being empowered. And we talked about that for a while. And he said, nope,
Yep.
that's not it. And we went for a little while longer and we hit on justice. And he said, it's not fair. The whole thing isn't. And I said, tell me more. He said, the boy who won, he didn't even do his own project.
Wow.
His father did it. And he said, and he got the recognition, and he didn't even do the work. And that just helps you to take an unidentified feeling of anger
Mm-hmm.
and be able to identify it down to, okay, I've now got it unpacked enough that I can do something with it. And that's the way I think you can use Agile Brain. And you can use it across any human behavior.
Yeah.
Our behavior is all coming from within us.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to my marathon runner for a minute and think about how we changed his training. Just as an example, he does a pre-marathon, post-marathon Agile Brain.
Okay.
And he points it at this, how I'm feeling about the upcoming race, how I'm feeling about the race I just completed. So when we were looking at his very first upcoming race, and I knew very little about him as a marathoner, how serious he was, where he was age-wise, and all those things. But I looked at his result, and we started talking, and I said, so tell me about this need for safety and security. I'm not quite understanding what it is. And he said, yeah, I don't either.
Okay.
And so I said, when you're going in, tell me some of the things that are in your head that you're quite comfortable with. And we talked for a while. And he said, I was injured 18 months ago. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Let's push on that a little bit in terms of the safety, security. Bridget, he went on to describe in such vivid detail what happened with the accident, down to the gravelly pavement slipping under his feet. He said, okay, so that's somewhere in the back of your head.
Yeah.
When you're working with that, when you're training, he said, so we started talking about his training. And he very proudly said, I do all of my work on a Peloton. I said, well, that's interesting. And he said, that's a really great machine. I said, I'm not arguing about that at all.
Right.
But we try, and this is not happening. I'm not talking in real time. This took a
Sure.
while to
Yeah,
get.
ever.
That.
Mhm.
But what I said to him is, have you given any thought to how predictable that environment is?
Safe.
It's real safe. You got it. And that you do not. So when you're stepping up to that starting line in the marathon, that's the first time you've really been on a street in a long
A
time.
long time.
And
Wow.
so I said to him again, if you're marathoning, I used the marathon. So I have how do you do your speed work? He said, all on the Peloton. I said, Diego, you're not ready. Your body and your mind, this is all new now. You're out there on the road. So what we started doing is doing his speed work in the street.
Okay.
And saying, you don't have to run track if you don't want to run track. I used to do speed work on a track, but do utility pokes. I'm going to go all out for the next 3.
Yep.
And it's just working. And he has a particular goal, and he hasn't made it public, so I've honored that but he has a goal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not simple as reaching that goal. There's a lot going on. He's 52 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't start marathoning until he was 48.
Oh, wow.
And he just did it by accident and discovered, you know what? I'm pretty good at this.
Okay.
And one of the feelings that gets to him after a race up there in that top level of Agile Brain
Mm-hmm.
in the intrapsychic or self domain is around potential and limitation. And boy, does limitation come creeping in after the race.
Yeah.
And is it about not being happy with his performance? Not really.
Mm-hmm.
But he does have in his head, did I start this too late?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's long-winded, but you can apply it in so many different ways.
Oh, absolutely. So, Margot, I'm curious for you talking on the educator side of things. One of the things that Bill said was that unpacking emotion and getting to the heart of what's going on and not making assumptions. And I know, myself included, as a former dean of students,
Mhm.
sometimes we get into that trap of like thinking we already know what's happening and not being curious enough to ask further or dig a little bit deeper. So I wanted to get your take on what Bill talked about and some key insights that you think educators should understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to your point, we do get wrapped up, and I think in schools, it's things have to happen like very quickly, right? And I think one of the great things about Agile Brain is that it's very fast. It takes 3 minutes to complete. And to your point, all of a sudden you have this wealth of information in front of you that you can dive into. And I think that is so important when you are trying to connect with a student, whatever the situation may be. It could be a discipline situation. It could be they're not performing or they're struggling with something, or they're all they can articulate is I'm anxious or I'm stressed out, which we hear that all the time. Students are constantly saying I'm stressed. Guess what? If they can't get beyond that, all of a sudden you
Right.
say, hey, let's take this cool little exercise. It's going to take 3 minutes. We'll give you a prompt and then let's dive into that. And
Mhm.
I think one of the things that we've talked a lot about at Agile Brain is that the concept of affect labeling. When you give something a name, whether it's one of the terms in our 12 cells, as Bill was alluding to, potential, success, safety, caring, any of those, all of a sudden you create this common language and students can identify what's happening. And that in of itself, just that concept of like, okay, the stress I'm feeling is stemming from, to use Bill's example, safety.
Uh-huh.
What does that look like? Let's unpack it from there. And it breaks down walls or barriers that might actually exist when you're trying to probe with a student, like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? If they can see in front of them, like, oh, I am activated in that world, like, what does that look like? And what does that mean? And where do you think that's coming from? All of a sudden, it's not you as the adult saying, what's going on with you? It's like, hey, this is showing what's going on.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it.
And I think that concept of affect labeling diffuses things. It gives people a common vocabulary. And that's really powerful in a school setting. And I think to your point, we do need to slow down when we're dealing with things sometimes, but to the point that it only takes 3 minutes to do. Anybody's got 3 minutes.
Yeah, you got 3 minutes.
And you get these instant results. And I think that's pretty amazing. And it's a tool that really could be beneficial on so many different levels. We've really talked about the individual here for most of this conversation. And I think the part that I also get really excited about is looking at group results. We can take the results of a class, a specific class or a specific grade or whatever, and really look at aggregate results and say, okay, as a former administrator in a school, I think that the students in my community, I'm going to use safety again because that's an easy one for people to identify with. And we say, oh, of course we have a safe environment. We have a great community. We have great kids. And then all of a sudden you have a population take this and that comes up as being on the prevention side of things. You're like, wait a second, what's going on? Let's pull that back. And so you can really guide your curriculum, your programming, your content, which that in of itself, talk about transformational for a school. I mean, and to me, that's where I get really excited, having been on that side of things. Like, if I had something like this, I would have been like, whoa, I could really
Absolutely.
change how we're doing things.
Sure. Just as a side note, because I hadn't really thought about the group thing initially, are you guys using this for sports teams as well? Or like, is that a piece that's happening? I mean, we talked about marathoning. That's one thing, but I'd be curious to know.
A couple of things, Bridget. And boy, would I love to claim it as my idea, but I can't. We're doing, I don't know if Margot has told you, we're doing a lot of work in Ukraine
Yes.
with kids. They, on their own, took it to 3 of their Olympic teams
No way.
and started using it on their own.
Wow.
And now we're using it with a couple of soccer teams,
Okay.
on a group level. And we're a we. But we've used it in programs, not just sports, but other groups. We've been working with a workforce development program. And those kids, they were taking it every Monday and every Thursday. And one of the great vignettes from that for me was they were having something blew up. They had
Yeah.
something like off the rails. And one of the kids said, you know what we need to do? We need to sit down and do an agile brain.
Nice.
Yeah,
I said,
That's when you know it's working.
that's right.
That's good stuff right there. So, a lot of schools are talking about well-being. They're trying to move from actually just talking about it to measuring and improving it. So, how does the Agile Brain help schools take that leap from intention to impact?
I think some of the things that we talked about already, certainly you can do that. It gives you actionable items to dive into with your community. And that, as Bill shared, and I'm going to let him talk about it a little bit more, is that we actually have metrics. So it's not, yes, you get this amazing framework that has the different cells in there and all that and the different levels and domains, but we also have numbers and metrics that really can dictate. And to the what I was talking to before is like, okay, you do a group exercise and you discover like, okay, the area of justice is really highly activated in the community right now. Let's peel back what's going on there. Let's put some things in place, whether it's making this up, obviously on the fly, like a student who is well known in the community, the student population feels like they were not treated fairly by the administration. Like we can all see that happening in schools,
Yep.
right? So then that's how to activate. It's like, okay, so let's peel back what's going on here. What do we put in place? What could we change in our community so that kind of feeling didn't happen again? And so then we're looking at the metrics, not only the activation of justice, but we have numbers, our well-being, positivity, and activation. Are those shifting and changing? And I think that's really important particularly for school administrators and others to be like, okay, what we're doing here is creating a difference in there. So to your point, we're not just talking about it. You have these actionable items that I think are really important. Bill, do you want to add anything else about, I mean, I didn't get into the true metrics of it, but I think you could certainly speak to that.
oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to make anybody's eyes glass over with the metrics, but they're real. It is quantitative. I mean, we are able to build predictive models with it. And unlike our personality measures, which we use a lot in psychology, and sometimes I sit back and say, you know what, they don't predict behavior at all. And everybody says they don't. We acknowledge that the big five is that they're just not great predictors of behavior. And we have all of those wonderful terms that we as psychologists can generate to justify our being.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing about Agile Brain is it really does predict. And I still remember the first study we ran looking at burnout in a working population with Agile Brain. And I ran the numbers and I said to JD, I've got to go back and check my work because I'm not believing these. I mean, it is just way too predictive. And
Wow.
it is predictive. It continues to be predictive. I mean, our validation studies in biomed central psychology, I don't attest to that, but the metrics are there. So you can say this has changed. When we're working with our groups of veterans, as we do, I can tell you that their need for safety and security has decreased 30 or 40 points over a 12-week period of this program. That's a success.
Yeah.
I can look at their need for achievement or success and say, that activation hasn't changed a lot, but there's been a complete shift from prevention needs to promotion needs. That means they were functioning on a premise of fear of failure. That's what they were working on when they start. And now they're functioning on, I want to achieve something that has some meaning. Those are measurable and huge shifts
That is huge.
in people.
For sure. So you were talking about data and measurable. And so a lot of times people think of data as cold or impersonal, but this kind of data really feels deeply human. And so how do you help schools build the capacity to interpret and act on the emotional data with empathy and care? Because sometimes people just dismiss it and like, oh, whatever, we got numbers to crunch. So how do you help folks kind of move in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, the beauty of it is, and I alluded to it before, is that you're creating a common language for the community, which you take Agile Brain. Again, the beauty of this is you can take it twice a week if you want to. You could take it once a month. You could take it once a quarter or however you want. But that common language, and I think we found that in schools, when there is a common language and you help your community understand that, then it becomes intertwined in what you do on the day-to-day. So
Yeah.
you're talking about, okay, that my sense of justice was activated here and why. And then students are using that or caring or inclusion or whatever. That I think is really important, and it softens that. And the fact that you can back it up with those metrics, which are important, just gives it validity. And I think that in this day and age, as much as we would love to say that our anecdotes and our stories about successes are enough, they are no longer enough in schools. And we
Right.
know that, right? The market has changed, and
It's
people
changed.
really want to know, is what's happening behind those doors, that where my child goes 5 days a week, for 8 hours a day, is it really making a difference? And we can say that on the social emotional level here with this. And I think that's that delicate balance that it does. And it really enables those kinds of conversations to happen. And then all of a sudden, families are like, wow, what you're doing at your school, that's pretty amazing. Because you're
Crazy.
backing up that soft stuff, right?
Yeah.
With these numbers. And I think it's really great. And it gives me chills to think about it, because that's all I wanted. Part of the reason why I left schools, but I've stayed connected in that educational space, is because I want what's best for students. And this is one of those things that can really help with that. And that to me, that's a game changer.
It absolutely is a game changer for sure. And so I love the way that Agile Brain really gives schools a way to make the invisible visible. And I know you've given us a couple of examples already where the data reveals something surprising, but can you share another story about something a school saw that they hadn't seen before?
Ooh, I have to think about that.
While you're thinking, Margot, let me
Yeah.
just jump in with one of our high school students, because I think it's different in a number of ways.
Yeah.
Where I take part in the last class. This particular school is a pretty progressive school. They have a well-being course for
Okay.
the kids. And so these kids are there, and I do take part in the last class, and it's just an open, ask me anything
Yep.
kind of thing. So this young woman stepped forward, and I don't know the students well. After the fact, I learned that they were shocked when she stepped forward. They said, she's your classic wallflower. She never participates. She stepped forward and she said, my brother and I, she said, I have a twin brother. She said, we got really interested in this. So I went to the website and I found some of the research articles that you have. And we went and we got the research article from Biomed Central. And I thought, this is not light reading. And she talked about they're working it. And I thought, so when have I encountered a high school student who got so intrigued that they went and did their own research before coming to this class? Which I think is cool in itself. The other one that I loved was a young man who was very respectful, and he stepped forward and he said, I think the framework is cool. And could I just tell you that I think you got the spiritual domain upside down? I thought, well, wow, that's thinking about it. The spiritual domain runs from justice as foundational through ethics as experiential to purpose or transcendence as that aspirational level. He said, I think purpose is foundational. I think the aspiration is justice and fairness. I said, well, let's talk about that. Because I think we're using words, and this is why I love pictures and not words.
Yeah.
I think so. So tell me more what you mean by purpose, and that's really what it came down to. Because ours is what I call purpose with the big P. It's really about transcendence and doing the unusual in that spiritual domain. He was saying it's a reason for doing things.
Gotcha.
But that was just again transformative. But the step that Margot talked about with affect labeling, I mean, this is stuff that we've validated now with fMRI. I mean, it's not that we think it works. Matthew Lieberman out at UCLA has done extensive studies, and
Mm.
they can tell you that it's not just happening in your brain, it's happening in your VMPMC, ventral medial prefrontal cortex, is quieting once you just put a label on it.
Wow.
So it's, this is the best work I've ever done.
That's awesome.
I mean, I think to Bill's, his two examples are just such great ones. I would say for me, talking and working with teachers as they plan their wellness curriculum and being able to pinpoint it towards something. I think one of the things that we've talked about already is stress and resilience. And how do we pinpoint that into something that's meaningful and actionable? And I think we've talked about the junior year and how the junior year is that legendary year, right? Nobody's going to
Right.
survive their junior year. And like, how are we going to do it? So what we've done is we helped implement this stress and resilience lesson. That's a 3-day lesson for a school. And we help apply that to using the Agile Brain exercise and like, how are you going to deal and manage with stress as a junior? And it's like, for those students, it doesn't take it away because the junior year is really important, but it gives them tools to work with. And I think that in of itself, and a way to have a conversation that is like, okay, we're in this, but we know how we're going to manage this. And like,
Yep.
how do I structure, whether it's as simple as time management, or is it, okay, I've really got to get my GPA up. These are things that you can do, and it gives you actionable items.
Right.
It's like, okay, what's driving you is it's really your fear of failure. It's not that you have to get all A's. So like, what's at the root of
Yeah.
it? I think for students, all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's
Whoa.
not that. And so then you watch their shoulders come down. And I think that's a magic that I've seen in play, which is very cool.
That is very cool. And so in these schools, we aspire to have emotionally intelligent leadership, right? And that people are being more curious and drilling down and unpacking things as they come and not just rushing through and checking the boxes. And so what does emotionally intelligent leadership look like when you have a data-informed school culture?
Boy, that's a great question. One of the things that was drilled into me early in clinical practice was a point of view that said what you need to consider in anyone you're working with is you need to consider their behavior to be a reasonable, and the word rational would have been used at that time, explanation for their behavior. There's a reason why they're doing that, and your clinical work is to determine what that is. I think that's real easy to say
Yeah.
and incredibly hard to do, because our reaction is, that's something that's not right. You shouldn't be doing that.
Well, our own emotions kick in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the kids, there's something wrong with me. And I think that's a real hard thing to shift. And I think Agile Brain is letting us do that.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Bill, you and I have talked a lot about how it's really an empowerment tool. And I think that if you can see it that way, that enables you to have a more grounded leadership approach, whether it's as a student leader or as an adult leading a community. I think that's really important. And we take for granted sometimes how complex schools are. But they really are. They're complex institutions, and they're living beings, and they change all the time. But having insight into sort of what's driving people is so important, and it just allows you to lead in a very different way.
Yep, absolutely. And so for the student life professionals, the deans, the counselors, and the advisors listening, where do you see the biggest opportunity to integrate neuroscience and well-being measurement into their daily work?
Everywhere.
I don't want to give a glib answer, but everywhere. Bridget, I think about working with counseling psychologists in a college.
Mm-hmm.
And we were looking at, with one group, I would have said we were getting a classic passive aggressive response. I don't need this agile brain stuff. I mean, I'm a trained clinician.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And somewhere lurking in the back there, is this going to take my job? And it's a compliment, not a competitor. But as we were working, we were looking at the difference in the agile brain profiles from the typical student population to those who had stepped forward and said, I need help. Those who were the intakes into the program.
Yep.
And one of the things that popped that I said, boy, that's interesting, because I hadn't considered it, was the cell on ethics in what we would call a prevention need. That is something about wrongdoing. So what is it about these students that have stepped forward and said, what is the wrongdoing? What is that about? Is that societal or is it within? And I can't answer that question because I didn't deal with them. But that's a need. And what I said to the counselors was, if we don't find an answer to that, can we ever really help that person?
Good question.
Again, our answer being glib of it can be everywhere. I think one of the things that is so, I think, important for educators on all level, whether it's a teacher all the way up to head of school, is that we know that the plate is only so big, right? And so how do you ask an educator to put something else on their plate? I think the beauty of what this tool does, and it's far more than just a tool, but that's an easy way to explain it, is that it allows you to peel back layers really quickly in a very short amount of time. So why not use it everywhere? I would say I wouldn't, as much as we would love people to jump in and say, yeah, let's do Agile Brain for everybody. Like you can start where it makes sense. Like it could be through your wellness programming, like we've done with a couple of schools, or it could be through your counseling office. There are different ways to have it become part of the everyday, but just not permeating the entire institution. But then there are the other schools that we were working with, particularly like in Ukraine. They're like, we're all in. And why not? But I do think we're trying very hard not to add anything major to that plate that is already overburdened. And it's something, to Bill's point, it complements the work that we all do. And we recognize that in education, it's a human to human sort of situation here. We're not trying to remove that. We're just trying to help that and make it feel that much more meaningful and deep when we make connections, because at the end of the day, relationship is everything.
Relationship is everything. Absolutely. And so we're really at an interesting moment in education, one that demands both innovation and empathy. If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about how schools approach student well-being, what would it be?
I would say make more time for it. Like you have to make more time for it.
1000%. I agree. Yep.
It's so critical. We try to fit it in where it.
Yep. A little sliver. Nope. You gotta.
Let's not do that. And if the schools that are really embracing that, I think they're seeing incredible change.
I guess I'd answer with another question, and that is, what's more important?
Oh,
there you go.
There you go. I love that. And so with that said, let's talk about Agile Brain and what you guys offer and how schools can be in touch with you and work with you.
Yeah, I mean, as I was sharing, we have lots of different entry points in which you can dive in, and what we want to do is show the tool and what it can do and expose schools to that. And we are happy and willing to do demos and all of that. And I think right now, to your point of that sort of that technology and how do we expand it, it's rapidly changing, and we are doing some really cool stuff, which we're excited to share with folks surrounding AI technology, all of that, and how we do that. But we would welcome the conversation. In fact, it's one of those things that I think Bill and I, when we work together with schools, it's the highlight of our day, right? Is to connect with schools and what they're doing and how they're changing and how they're trying to help their student population. And it just starts with a conversation. So reaching out to us and saying, hey, we're struggling with X, Y, and Z, we're here to listen and help. I think that one of our sort of key mission statements is I'm reading it because I want to get it right. We help humans value emotions to drive positive change.
Hmm.
That there's nothing grounded and great about a statement like that, right? And I think that's who we are. We're amazing people who really want to see students succeed, do well, and do good. So anytime we can engage in conversation, we're more than happy to.
Awesome. And so is it that they would purchase the Agile Brain package, they use it at their school, and do you come in and help with interpretation? Do you visit the schools? Like, what's the process like?
Yes, great
on that end?
question. So we have offer different packages, and it varies, and it all depends. And we have 3 tiers. One is, as I said, we have the counseling package, which that's logical. I think a lot of schools can see how that would be used in the counseling office. We have the well-being. You talked about that, the well-being curriculum. Schools that are teaching it, we have that curriculum, and we are working with schools there. And then there's the sort of whole campus-wide package, which we certainly offer, which encompasses all of that. And I think, yes, we do work with schools one-on-one. It's pretty amazing. Obviously, if we all of a sudden have 300 schools, that scalability becomes more challenging, but we're getting there. As I shared, the AI technology allows for, we have a Dr. Bill chatbot, which is amazing. So that's more
Right.
for the administrator side or teacher side of things. And then we have JD the Penguin, who is for the student-facing side of things, in which that enables sort of these conversations. And how do you dig through your results? And as a teacher, how would I go and help a particular student
Yeah.
or students with this information? That's a way to do it without having to engage with an individual. We are absolutely more than willing to do that. And we certainly do. I meet with schools regularly. Bill meets with practitioners regularly. So we are constantly doing that to the point of, we still feel that human connection is really important. So we don't want to have that disappear altogether.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, last question, because I want to end on a hopeful, positive note. We're dealing with big questions, human emotion and motivation, and the future of education. What keeps you both grounded and hopeful?
My quick answer would be the kids in school.
Mhm.
That is fair. I love that.
I think that there's amazing resilience there. I think our work in Ukraine has shown a resilience in one ways. In other ways, it just makes me laugh. But we did parents, teachers, and students in Ukraine. And for example, our foundational need in the self-domain is safety, security. And
Yeah.
the kids are saying, safety, security?
Wow, really?
Not on my list. I'm living in this social
I'm
domain.
good.
I'm in the social domain. I mean, how am
Wow.
I don't want to be excluded from the group. It's pretty wild how resilient they are.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
But there is just an incredible strength of the human spirit there. Yeah, the teachers, on the other hand, say, whoa, safety, of course.
That's what I would have said. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, right? I mean,
Yeah.
now what do I know?
Yeah, how far am I from the nearest shelter? Right.
Exactly. And what their
Yeah.
everyday experience is like. I can't imagine being in a country where that's their everyday experience, is that you may be bombed, and they're not even
Yeah.
concerned about that.
And Bridget, you listen to Defy, the most hardened person, listen to the psychologists over there talk about they used Agile Brain. And if you can make it through that without at least a tear in your eye, you're tuned out. Because they are just so thankful for having it
Wow.
to be something that's helped them, what they would say is move much faster than they ever dreamt they could.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Bill said. It's helping students find their voice, whatever that looks like, that's the greatest gift we can give, because these are the next leaders. And I know that sounds glib and cliche, but it's the truth. And if we can help students become more in tune with their emotions, because emotions drive everything, like, they are going to be that much more grounded in who they are and what they become. And we're in the business of creating great human beings. And that to me is the best thing ever. And although I'm not in a school today, knowing That is profoundly impactful for me.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you guys both so much. So before we wrap, humor me and do a little lightning round of questions.
Sure.
All right. First one, favorite book or podcast about the brain or behavior?
Ooh. Bill, you got one. You got to have one before me. I'm terrible because I don't listen to enough podcasts.
One more time, Bridget.
Yep. It's favorite book or podcast about the brain or behavior.
Oh, I love the podcasts that Robert Sapolsky does. He's this neuroscientist out of Stanford.
Okay.
He's just a fascinating individual because any guy who spent 30 years of his life splitting it between his lab at Stanford and living with a group of baboons in Africa, yeah, he's going to be a great guy. But he's just, if you think about his work, he's just incredibly well informed, but he is a wonderful human, and he doesn't ever let you take the human element out of what he's doing. So he's got a podcast he's doing now with his daughter. I think that's fascinating. I think Andrew Huberman's stuff is interesting. He's also out of Stanford. Favorite books? I love Sapolsky's last book was called Determined. But I love the work of Anil Seth, who's out of the United Kingdom, in terms of he's got a great I think the healthiest neuroscience view of consciousness and what we are, and how our life is really what he would call controlled delusions, because we really do make our world. We're not recording devices taking something in passively. We're active participants there. And the same thing with another guy, David Eagleman, great book, Live Wired. So it's
a couple out there.
Yeah, and as Jeff Lichtman at Harvard says, and he's the one who developed I don't know if you know this whole new field of optogenetics, where they've been able to introduce genes into animals that they can now control their behavior with light beams.
Oh, wow.
And so Jeff Lichtman is the one who developed what he called brainbow mice. But he says that every day he wakes up and he's just driven by how much we don't know.
It's a lot. That's for sure.
It is a lot. Can you tell that Bill doesn't have young kids like I do? Like he's got time to listen to the person. They're going, I'm like, when was the last time
No pressure, Margot.
Margot, when we had the three boys when they were younger, though, my oldest son, Jared, used to say, give Dad a stack of books and some ice for whatever was aching at the moment, because I was actively marathoning.
Right.
Yeah, he's a happy guy.
There you go. We're going to move on. So one thing that always sparks your curiosity.
My kids.
That is fair.
They push me to think about things differently and look at things differently. If I can slow myself down enough to see that world through their eyes, it just makes me so curious. And it's amazing what they come up with. It really is.
Love that.
I remain fascinated, Bridget, by we humans, because we can be really good and we can be really awful.
That is very true. Unfortunately.
And what brings that about? Just being grateful for what we have.
Yes.
Yep.
Gratitude is definitely important.
Yeah.
All right. Coffee, tea, or something stronger?
Given that I'm on, let's see, this is 24 shots of espresso
Oh,
today.
jeez. What?
Bill.
Yeah, I'm one of those folks who caffeine doesn't keep me awake. I'm definitely
Whoa.
coffee.
Yeah.
Espresso is a delight for me, but I can have 4 shots of espresso and then go fall asleep.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, for 4 days.
Yeah.
How about you, Margaret?
It depends on the time of day, but coffee in the morning.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. And lastly, one word that describes how you feel when a student or school has an emotional breakthrough.
I guess I'd say joyous.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, I get chills thinking about it. So it's that there's a visceral response of, exuberance and happiness.
Oh, I like the word exuberance.
Yeah. I have literally had that physical reaction of goosebumps listening to people talk about different Agile Brain experiences.
That's awesome. Guys, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed it. It's been fascinating to learn more about Agile Brain. I've used it myself. It's been a real interesting experience for me on my end, and definitely can't recommend it to schools enough. So thanks again, you guys, for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bridget.
I always love to talk about it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so thanks for pulling up a chair at the table today. I hope this conversation gave you something to think about, or maybe even something to try out in your own community. What I love about the Agile Brain is how it reminds us that emotion and cognition aren't opposites, they're partners. When schools learn to see and measure the emotional side of learning, we unlock a new level of understanding, one that helps every student and every educator thrive. If you're enjoying the table, don't forget to subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave us a comment. It really helps more people find us. And as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time at the table. Thanks so much and have a great day.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Table Podcast Series. Is your student life program delivering on your mission? Our new K-12 student life assessment moves you beyond anecdotes to evidence-based decisions. Through comprehensive stakeholder surveys and expert analysis, you'll get concrete insights across 8 essential dimensions of student life, from culture and wellness to staff effectiveness and resource allocation. We're seeking founding partner schools to be the first to experience this transformative assessment process and help shape the future of student life evaluation. Today's episode was hosted by Bridget Johnson in conversation with Bill Nolan and Margot Moses, produced and edited by Andrick Sigmund, and music by PremiumBeat.com. For any questions, contact information can be found in the episode description. And, as always, thanks again for listening.